the inspiring story of America's first black diver who beat racism. In a quiet village, far from the city, a boy named Carl grew up watching his father toil as a corn farmer. Every day, Carl saw the sweat and hardship on his father's face and felt a deep sense of guilt. He wanted to help, but his father always refused, telling him to study and play like other children.
I'm not going to school, Daddy. Not today.
Still, Carl insisted until his father finally gave in. From that day forward, Carl worked beside him in the fields. Years passed, and Carl grew into a strong young man. One morning while he was tending the garden, his mother rushed over, reminding him it was the day of his departure. Carl was leaving for the United States Naval Military Training Selection. At the moment of farewell, his father gave him a painful instruction: never return to the village again. Though it broke his heart, his father wanted Carl to succeed without the burden of worrying about family. But when Carl reached the base, reality was harsher than he imagined. The military at that time didn't allow black men to serve as soldiers. Carl was assigned as a cook, a reminder of the prejudice that saw black people as nothing more than servants. One day, he noticed the white recruits swimming and asked why they had different schedules. His friend explained bluntly, white and black trainees were never allowed to swim together. Carl couldn't understand why people who were all human had to be separated. Recklessly, he dove into the pool. The moment he touched the water, voices of insult rained down on him. Even the captain ordered his removal. For his defiance, Carl was locked in the punishment room. But the captain, secretly impressed by Carl's speed, assigned him to the rescue swimming team. Carl was overjoyed and quickly wrote home to tell his parents. Soon after, disaster struck. A helicopter crashed into the ocean. The Navy's top diver, Master Chief Billy Sunday, led the rescue. Despite saving one pilot, the man didn't survive. When another diver descended for the co-pilot, his safety rope snapped, sending him plummeting to the sea floor. Without hesitation, Sunday jumped in without a suit, pulling him out alive. The rescue left Sunday gravely injured, his lungs damaged, and doctors forbade him from diving again. Furious at his fate, Sunday caused a scene and was later demoted to coach the diving team. Witnessing all this, Carl approached the captain with a bold request. He wanted to train as a Navy diver. Inspired by Sunday's heroism, he was determined to follow that path. The captain, moved by Carl's resolve, reluctantly allowed him to transfer. When Carl arrived at the dive camp, guards were shocked. No black man had ever been permitted there. Chief Sunday himself appeared, but instead of welcoming Carl, he mocked him, saying black men belonged in kitchens, not in diving suits. Still, Carl refused to leave. He reminded himself of the promise he made to his father. Finally, Sunday let him in. At the camp, Carl found himself isolated. Only one recruit, Snowhill, a white trainee, greeted him without prejudice. The others rejected Carl's presence, even abandoning their dormitory rather than share it with him. Chief Sunday, despite his own bitterness, made it clear Carl was officially part of the program. But life was merciless. Late at night, other recruits dragged Carl outside, beating him while accusing Sunday of dishonoring himself by allowing a black man into the camp. Carl endured in silence, determined not to quit. Training began, brutal and unforgiving. Sunday warned them. Swimming and diving were two different worlds. Even Snowhill, once considered the best swimmer back home, failed to handle the diving test and was dismissed. Carl pressed on, but when the written exams came, he struggled badly. He was warned that another failure meant expulsion. Instead of giving up, Carl went to the city library during break, where he met a nursing student named Jo. At first, she refused to help, but his persistence convinced her. Together they studied, and in time, Carl's grades improved. Back at camp, Sunday continued pushing the trainees to their limits. During one exercise, two divers named Roar and Ashar were ordered to weld on a sunken ship, but disaster struck again. The vessel shifted dangerously, and Ashar's air hose became trapped. Above the surface, panic spread as their cries for help echoed through the communication lines. With no one else willing, Carl volunteered to go down. Sunday gave him only 5 minutes. 5 minutes before the trapped diver's air ran out. With the heavy 200-kilogram suit crushing his body, Carl descended into the depths. In the chaos below, one diver panicked and abandoned him. But Carl, despite frustration, stayed focused on saving Ashar. Against all odds, he managed to pull off the rescue, proving his courage and determination. Carl's determination never wavered, but recognition still eluded him. During the next ceremony, Chief Sunday read aloud an award from the Navy commander. Everyone expected Carl's name. Instead, the honor was given to Rook. Despite Carl's bravery and sacrifice in saving his comrades, the commander refused to acknowledge his deeds simply because he was black. The injustice stung, but Carl bore it with patience. Slowly, his fellow trainees began to notice his resilience. One by one, sympathy turned into respect, and for the first time, some of them wanted to be his friends. Days later, Carl called home. His mother answered with heartbreaking news. His father had died. Carl was devastated. His mother explained that his father had hidden his illness all this time, not wanting his son to lose focus on his training. Carl wept, feeling the weight of the promise he had made. In his grief, he asked Jo to meet him for comfort, but before she could arrive, another woman approached him. She introduced herself as Chief Sunday's wife. She too was hurting on what should have been her wedding anniversary. Her husband had chosen to celebrate with his Navy comrades instead. She invited Carl to join her at the bar, where Sunday was drinking. When Carl entered, the room fell silent. Every sailor turned to stare at him, then reported his presence to Sunday. Enraged, Sunday shouted at Carl, declaring that black men didn't belong in that place. For the first time, Carl snapped. Through his anger, he accused his coach of being jealous that Sunday saw in him a strength and potential greater than his own. The argument drew Joe's attention, but before Carl could explain, Sunday issued a challenge. A breath-holding contest underwater. If Carl lost, he'd be expelled. If he won, Sunday would allow Snow Hill back into camp. Carl accepted without hesitation. The contest was brutal. Seconds stretched into minutes, but Carl refused to surface. His willpower carried him beyond his limit, and in the end, he won. Exhausted yet triumphant, Carl returned only to realize Jo was gone. He chased after her and found her preparing to leave. Tearfully, she revealed she had accepted a nursing job in another city. Shocked, Carl impulsively proposed, promising that after graduation, he would come to her. The next day, Chief Sunday was summoned by Mr. Pappy, the camp's ruthless overseer. Pappy ordered him not to let Carl pass the final exam under any circumstances. Sunday, who once despised Carl, now recognized his determination and worth. But refusing his superior meant ending his career. He reluctantly passed on the order to Carl. An argument erupted. In his frustration, Sunday smashed Carl's father's old radio, the last memento Carl had left of him. Carl was crushed, but his resolve only deepened. When exam day arrived, Carl stood tall, eyes filled with unshakable confidence. Sunday, seeing that fire, could not deny him. The test began. Bags containing assembly equipment were dropped into the sea. But when Carl's bag was thrown, Pappy ordered it sabotaged. Torn apart underwater, the contents scattered. Carl knew nothing. Hours passed, yet he kept searching piece by piece. Every other trainee surfaced, completing their task, but Carl remained below. Pappy barked commands over the line, ordering Sunday to abandon him. Torn between orders and conscience, Sunday hesitated as the night dragged on. Meanwhile, Jo, sensing something was wrong, rushed back to the base. At last, Sunday made his decision. Defying Pappy, he ordered the other divers to haul Carl up. But before they could, Carl surfaced on his own, exhausted but victorious, having perfectly assembled the gear. Against all odds, he had passed. At graduation, Snow Hill returned with news. The Navy had finally opened training to other black recruits. But there was also bad news. Sunday had been dismissed for defying Pappy. He packed his belongings in silence, but when Carl found his father's radio restored and working, he realized Sunday had secretly repaired it for him. The bond between them, once forged in conflict, was now unspoken respect. Years passed. Carl became a senior Navy diver, married Jo, and had a son. His skills earned him one of the most dangerous missions in American history, recovering a lost nuclear bomb from the ocean floor. Failure meant a devastation for an entire region. Though his commanders doubted him, Carl completed the mission. His success was broadcast nationwide, turning the man once dismissed as a cook into a national hero. But triumph came at a cost. During the operation, Carl suffered a terrible accident. When he awoke in the hospital, Jo told him the truth. His leg had been mangled, nearly severed. Doctors declared he would never walk normally again. For Carl, it felt like betrayal to his father's memory. a failure of the promise he had carried all his life. Meanwhile, Chief Sunday, stripped of his rank and drowning in despair, languished in a mental hospital. One day, a nurse handed Sunday a newspaper. In its pages, he read about Carl's accident. Though broken himself, he knew he had to help his former student. At the hospital, Carl begged the Navy to let him return to duty once healed, but Captain Hanks coldly denied him. Desperate, Carl asked doctors to amputate his leg. Better to lose it entirely than live crippled, unable to dive. Jo was furious, torn between love for her husband and fear of losing him forever. But Carl had made his choice. Recovery was grueling. With a prosthetic leg, Carl began retraining, teaching himself to live and move again. Sunday came to him, confessing that they shared the same fate both divers who had fallen. Both men haunted by failure. But he reminded Carl of who he was, a fighter who never gave up. He promised to help him convince the Navy. The decisive day came. In a Navy courtroom, Carl stood before officers who doubted him. Captain Hanks presented the challenge. If Carl could walk 12 steps wearing a 200-kilogram diving suit, he would be reinstated. If not, he was finished. As Carl suited up, Jo and their son entered quietly, watching. From outside, Sunday fought his way in, pleading for leniency. But Carl stopped him with a glance. He wanted no pity. Then, with every ounce of strength, Carl began his trial. 1 step, 2, 3. His body trembled under the crushing weight. Sweat poured down his face. Move your ass, Cookie! I want my 12. Sunday barked, pushing him on. 9, 10, 11. At last, Carl reached 12. He stood firm, refusing to collapse. The room erupted in applause. The Navy had no choice but to reinstate him. Carl Brashear had done the impossible. Sunday watched silently. His student, once mocked and doubted, had taught him the most important lesson, that courage and determination could break any barrier. As the crowd celebrated, Sunday saluted Carl one final time. It was the salute of a teacher to the man who had surpassed him, a man who had fulfilled his promise to never give up. Carl Brashear, once a poor farmer's son told never to return home, had become the first black U.S. Navy Master de Varon, enduring symbol of resilience, honor, and unbreakable will. Please don't forget to like and subscribe.